Hello and welcome to this second recording or video or episode of this series that I've entitled the 88 series. If you weren't here for the first video, here meaning you watched it or not, um, there are some things in that video you might want to watch so this one makes sense, but you should do, excuse me, whatever you want. But a reminder that this is kind of a reshare. I've been editing some things here and there, but primarily these slides are shares from a journey that I hosted from December 2024 to May 2025. And so there are themes, a bunch of different themes that I am spinning together, you could say, but really I'm acknowledging them. And the main point being that I or you can find everything and anything, or anything and everything, and the fabric of reality has many facets to it. So let's see. I think I included some visuals from the last one. Yes. A realization birthed. And we see something from our lenses for seemingly the first time. So much has been, and many have recognized, acknowledged, noticed, learned, mastered, etc. Even even people we may have decided don't fit the idea of who we believe could master something, such as a life lesson of a certain degree. Um, and let me read that again. Like I mentioned before, there will be typos in this. So I will do my best to edit, but I was working with a keyboard missing a lot of keys when I wrote these initially. So even people we may have decided don't fit the idea of who we believe could master something such as a life lesson of a certain degree and embody and hold keys we could not necessarily consciously or willfully imagine or fathom. I don't expect anyone to believe my story, but it is that, my story, and I cherish it without attaching to it as an identity. I'm going to actually share a bit of it right now before going deeper into this second recording covering the Virgo-Pisces axis. I don't know how long the video will be. Take this again with a grain of salt. Our stories span beyond the conception of our being, and yet, as these individual beings we are, I find it fun to explore, to share, to not assume everyone attaches to stories and identities in the same ways. So you could say my story and your own has many different beginnings and foundations, and this is why it can be so fun to share, but this is also why sharing stories can feel so enveloping. Some may feel soothed by the envelope, the hug, where others may feel claustrophobic. So, for the sake of time and not sharing my entire story, although Storytime with Tree series is where I am sharing many of my life stories in another series on my YouTube channel. So, while I'm not sharing it all, let us play with perception. This version of my story begins at the spark of light when my mother's egg accepted a sperm from my father to join in electricity and magnetism, to consent with the elements and the unknown to forge a path and journey as me, knowing what was to come. The male seed meeting the female seed to cement this journey, a moment at which I felt terrified. I thought, I can't go back now, although I was not fully in control. And there are two parts of this arrival. One is where I believe I was on some sort of spaceship with other space commanders, and we were playing a card game. I looked to the others and I looked down at what we were calling the Earth plane, all the dramas. You could see fires, dust clouds, gases, and explosions. I suggest whoever loses this round has to go live one of their reserve Earth lives, because we were playing this card game, you know? A reserve Earth life would be something like in the dawn of a person's soul, there are a bunch of situations and circumstances calculated with all that is, and any path can be taken. So, like maybe you have been to Earth before, but no time or space is experienced in the same exact way. So, there are many versions and lives and roles one could step into. For whatever reason, I felt different, like I was just visiting Earth and not quite like other humans. Even on this spaceship, there was a conversation about how we had all lived all of our Earth lives, but as we looked down on that plane, I noted, it looks like they could still use some of our help, though. And so living one of your reserve Earth lives was sort of just a way to play around with whatever my now more human perception was contemplating a choice to bring consciousness into form. I can recall the others agreeing to this reserve Earth life round of a card game. And well, I'll mention in just a bit where I felt I landed after that. One of the other versions of this story, where I was sort of inside my mother's body, and it felt like almost out of nowhere. I was in this space watching the sperm and egg meet and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this again. And it felt like the reasons as to why I had chosen this were furiously slipping away the longer that I was in this time space. I felt like I had to hold on to something that wanted freedom beyond perceivable means for my infant mind. And so I guess at that point, I was not even an infant yet. And so I felt like I existed outside of my mother's body as well as inside of her womb to the point where she would tell a story about falling down the snowy, frozen steps with me in her belly. And I remember it, but where I am viewing it from the outside, from the inside and outside of her body. I don't really think she believes me when I said that to her. I thought I was the one who fell until I heard her retell this story years later. I can recall day to day inside of this warm place, terrified to continue to grow, knowing that I had also chosen this life beyond this spaceship storyline, but including it. I chose this life long, long ago, seemingly. I felt like my human perception of life here was very different from my perception beyond or before being in this human body, which was beautiful, but so confusing. I knew before I was born that I would be misunderstood mostly through words. Knowing this plane felt cut off or even just a little bit off, and that little bit offness was everywhere. I recall growing older in my mother's belly and hearing all the commotion and conversations. I was not excited for this timing, although a huge part of me knew that this was the life I would do this stuff, where I would end cycles. The doctors and nurses who my mother checked in with were concerned for me as I neared my birth, further into this plane and out of her body. I felt like I had an important role in this life. And I already felt like I wouldn't be taken seriously. I was way too scared and I didn't want to come out. I was excited, but for a future point in time. And I knew that life here would be slower than my beyond human form was used to. Some part of me knew my life would not be easy. They would say my heartbeat was hard to hear. And at some point, what my mom believed to be drunk nurse jumped on top of my mother's belly while yelling about me being dead in her, being unable to hear my heartbeat. I could hear all of this and was just so comfy and warm. Maybe I could do another reserve Earth life. But the thing is, this reserve Earth life was the life I do stuff. Every life is important, and no life is just some throwaway space and place filler. Once I was born, I don't recollect as clearly. It was just all too much. And I hated being swaddled and carried around. I hated being treated like I didn't understand anything. I hated how basically no one was telepathic. I hated being treated like I was some blank slate who came here to learn. I hated it so much. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. Then one summer, haha, one late summer, it's my name. My name means late summer or harvest. One late summer day when I was 15 months old, my family took a trip to Indianapolis to visit my mother's childhood friend from Canada, her husband and their three children, triplets, two girls and a boy. I can sort of recall the trip there, but oh boy, do I recall the trip back, and nearly every day since. One day while we were there, I can recall opening the back door and going outside and the sun hitting me, and bam! It was like the consciousness from that spaceship scene had met up with 15-month-old me. Maybe that's just how I perceived it. Maybe that is how I perceived it so that I could handle it. A note is we were in Indiana this trip, and Indiana seems to be the center of a lot of certain paranormal activity, if you will. I felt slapped with consciousness and awareness. The spaceship, the time in my mother's womb, my memories from beyond, so much I could not comprehend, so much I could not put into form or words, at least not these American English words. But it was like I had become fragmented while simultaneously and rapidly coming together, like a part of me somewhere else planned this. I almost felt like absolutely none of this was a mistake or accident, and that another version of me in another dimensional time, space, synced up the timing and the geographic location of Indiana for me to be cued with what many call a spiritual awakening, but at 1 year and 3 months old. I was experiencing many versions of myself at once that I would soon refer to as the many me's. One being this 15-month-old self, another being me who is a product of the genetics and the past of the two people who had sex and birthed me, my parents. Another being this other me. A me that was aware of the ways I took to get here, the map I used to come into form, step by step, bit by bit. I remembered picking up atoms of all that is along the way and how I would see the future and the past at once. And other versions of me could be labeled that could be labeled as other or past lives. I was aware that these other lives were not me, but were also somehow a part of my journey. I can vividly recall looking at my hands, thinking in horror, I'm not supposed to be remembering all of this. Not now, I'm just a baby. But at the same time, no, 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 no. Did I get this wrong? Did I time this wrong? I'm just a baby? A baby? And I'm doing this because I was looking at those tiny baby hands. How am I going to be able to go on and not go insane? The elements felt almost painful to experience. Everything felt amplified, times a million, like I was plugged in from some other time space, but here in this time space. And although I felt like I wanted it to be a mistake, a huge part of me knew this is how it all had to happen. The unknown will never be known. Why did I think I could plan it all out? I could feel how sad and under hypnosis so much and so many were. A huge part of me felt that the bad aliens had placed a net around the earth, measuring and monitoring all living beings in some sense. And I felt like they would know that I somehow broke through their hypnosis, which made me feel even more scared. And yet I knew this was all bigger than me, aside from me being so small. I would notice the geometrics of the land that we were on, of the playground we were playing at. I could see beyond the physical and sense into the ways the lines fit together. I knew that this energy here existed all over, but I didn't know what that meant. Once I got back home, I understood that dimensional planes are accessed through certain measures of frequency, and that the land in Indiana would mimic other places I would visit and send certain frequencies and energies. I felt like I had a duty to the lands I lived on and would make it a point to acknowledge and say hi to everything. I knew it all rippled and echoed outward and inward, and that everything was connected in this place, through some means, and that those means would differ in each moment, and each interaction, and each combination. I knew, go away, Mr. Ant. I knew I did not kill the ant. I just moved him. Um, Let me actually change that. Okay. Where was I now? Sorry. I knew my acknowledgement somehow mattered, even if it was not clear how. I walked up to the group of kids I was around, including my two sisters and the triplets that we were visiting, and I asked their neighbor, a taller girl, where are we on the Earth mission? She bent down and put her hands on her scalp like this and grabbed it. I'll take off my hat to show you. And moved it all around and said, I'm wearing a wig. I tried to say, no, you aren't. You are just moving your scalp around with your hands. But it came out like baby talk or gibberish, like blah, 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 blah. And this was the first time I tried to speak aloud, and it came out like that. I'm sure I had tried prior to that, but the first time since I remembered being on that spaceship. She laughed at me, patted me on the head, and called me a dumb little baby. And this reminded me of the rage I had felt in the womb and how a big part of me, although I felt like it was fate, I hated it. It felt like too much. I won't go into more details of this specific story, although this is one of the stories I tell on the Story Time with Tree series, because it would take forever. But something I will say is that I recalled almost every day of my life from that day forward. I believe it was August 1989. It's actually August right now. In that trip, I had visions of the past and the future, and I was focused on a time in about 30 years when much would shift, a time I sort of came here for. And yet I felt like I woke myself up too early. And day to day, everything was so entirely slow. Now, I didn't grow up in a super loving and safe home environment. And at the same time, it wasn't the worst thing ever because I did have basic care. But this left a lot of room for me to explore. I explored a lot, but I didn't feel safe. Day to day, everyone treated me like a small baby girl who was basically here to fill a role for them. I had no voice, I had no say, and no one treated me like I mattered, like I had consciousness, or like I had a story beyond playing a character in theirs. Not like this was all evil and nefarious, but it's how I felt. We are all the main characters of our own stories. Before I could speak, so much conditioning would infiltrate my being, and much would be avoided by my awareness. And when I could finally talk, people just dismissed me, called me crazy, stupid, immature, etc., whatever. Although none of what I was saying was any of those things. From ages 4 to 9, I would carry around snow globes that I collected and ask people if that was a more accurate depiction of Earth than the Earth world globes at school, etc. I would like just whip it out and be like, you see this? What do you think? Do you think this is more like the globe? Like it's see-through? See-through. As I got older, I would speak about the year 2020 and how a great change would arrive, and that much of what people viewed as crazy or stupid from me would almost be normal. I had this blend of memories, my recollections and the persona I am as Teresa experiencing this life. And I felt like in the year 2020, time would end and the man people talk about being in the sky would come down from his post, and all time would begin to be acknowledged as Earth was remembered more clearly. By the time I was 8 years old, I had deeply contemplated this fractalized nature of this plane and was convinced that in some way we were, in fact, the very bad aliens that we were afraid of and aware of, conscious and or not consciously. In 1998, which is one of the years having a current revisit. So back at the end of 2024, 1998, there were a lot of things that were happening that were reminiscent of that timing. So in 1998, I was very into the dream world and layers of reality others were not acknowledging or even realizing. Layers that would be brought up that year in the Truman Show movie. And 10 years later in the movie Inception. And while watching both movies, I would think, haha, bad aliens trolling me again through Hollywood. But hopefully it wakes some people up. I would spend much of the time my time in the 90s trying to wake people up from spells. In 1998, I was 10 years old. I already had a good idea by then, since that day in 1989, that I had to live my own journey and not get too caught up on how much others perceived me in this or that way. And that shit was hard. I was incredibly bullied, but I would often attribute things to bad aliens trying to keep me down, like it was some sort of training for the year 2020 and beyond. This is when I learned the word hindsight when I was 10, and I had vision that was better than 2020 vision. I created an art campaign, I think I was in fourth grade, called Roy G. Biv for President in the year 2020, when we will all have 2020 hindsight as rainbows emerge again as truth. The spells will break and more will remember. And being weird will be normal was another part of it. In the year 2020, you'll see being weird is normal. That is something I used to say to people. So you can imagine, I know I'm not alone here in some regards, after a life spent in this plane and still being conditioned and not remembering the entire picture either, how when the year 2020 rolled around and so much happened the way I saw it happening, I had almost given up before then. So many people called me stupid and crazy and went out of their way to dismiss me and shame me. Even with my stories of that being even with my stories of that being programming by the bad aliens, I knew we were in some way these bad aliens, and it all felt like too much. I hated it here. Time and time again, my intuition would be right about things, and I wouldn't always listen to it. I would conform to play a certain role and learn to be okay with being dismissed, I guess. In 2019, I kept saying, "Do you feel the big shift coming?" To the point where I got scolded at my job for saying that to the patients. It was a cannabis doctor's office, okay? And then in 2020, with people calling me to ask me, how did you know so much was going to shift? And I still sort of hated it here. I didn't want to arrive in others' lives as some bearer of truth or knowledge. Again, there is, of course, much more to my story and all the stories within it, but I wanted to share some of that before moving along this axis, especially as Virgo and Pisces both come after Gemini and Sagittarius, the highlighters of truth and what we do with it. As I do not expect you to believe me or take what I say and actually receive it all the way that I am relaying it, I think it is important to view what we call the truth from varying angles. Many do not remember what I do, and they do not remember who they were before more cumulative conditioning was formed as entity and identity. And there are so many ideas and stories that circulate from those who do not remember. And so, no, I am not here to tell you that I am right or that you should listen to me, but I am here to ignite that part of you, the part that I feel responsible for acknowledging, especially in a world where so many are afraid to be called stupid or crazy. So they tell stories instead of living them, unafraid of knowing that they are not owned by them. Like the chapters of a book or books in a series or books in a library. There are stories of buildings. Let's even say stories of library buildings. Keystones are multidimensionally faceted, not formed based on who wants to say, "I told you so." Basic transduction sequence of consciousness into biological form. This is from the Freedom Teachings, from the Keylontic Science manuals. I forget which one I got this from, but it's in many of them. So I just copy and pasted the text here. I'm going to read each line. We have that step-by-step process to some degree of a logical way. We come from energetic form into a more physical-based form. We have consciousness moving to partiki units, then to Cathara, scalar grid levels. Let me fix that just because I want to. It's not scalar, it's scalar. Cathara scalar grid levels 1, 2, and 3 to partiki grids. To morphogenetic fields, aka instruction set fields, to the Merkaba fields. 2, DNA RNA imprint to bioenergetic auric field to chakras. To nadial or nodal capsule. 2, DNA RNA manifest to nadis. 2, nuclear core. 2, central nervous system, metabolic, biological rhythms, blood, brain, chemicals, hormones, organs, tissues. A primordial energy beyond that which could be labeled and defined, beyond the known that wishes to remain unknown. She who feels beyond formless form. Do you know who you are? And what is knowing? What is remembering? What is creating? What is conscious? What is subconscious or unconscious? At some point, a plan to solve the formula is realized to be the journey path. Were you ever supposed to figure it all out, or are you here for something else? This is the last slide from the last recording. Back to some Virgo energies and physiology before getting back to the Virgo-Pisces axis and Poseidon. The sun, energy, in the bowels of Earth reflects energy, broadcasts it also, to the degree to which it receives it. The human body possesses two lenses. The one in the cerebrum, which focuses light vibrations impinging, I don't know words, on the brain from above into the optic thalamic center. is the upper, and the celiac ganglia of the solar plexus is the lower. Upper, lower, positive, negative, above, below, black hole sun, inner suns, etc. I did right there. Positive as Aries masculine and negative as Virgo feminine. Next, let's talk about the Virgo glyph. Well, we'll get there in a sec. I forgot to mention on the last recording, it doesn't really matter, but when discussing the word Kali from the cell salts that begin with the word like Kali Phos, Aries, Kali Mer, Gemini, Kali Sulf, Virgo, that there are even more layers to this word and this energy. So alkali, remember we have algali being father, mother, positive, negative, above, below, etc., etc., potassium, kalium, and beyond. Etymology of Kali, a name of a Devi, the Hindu mother goddess, and her black-skinned death aspect. 1798 from Sanskrit, Kali, literally the black one. Feminine of Kala, blue, black, black, a word from Dravidian language. Also taken as the feminine of Kala, time, as destroyer. Here, blue-black can be a nod to the Doradic capstone energies, which I'll share some about, but that was a big theme of 2024 and of this year. And the 10th chakra, which is at times called the solar star, soul star, solar star chakra, etc., and it's considered to be sapphire in color or blue-black. In Greek, Kali, as well as variations like Kala, means good, well, merry, happy. And so now we're getting to the glyph. I probably could have switched those around, but that was just a note on the different variations and versions of the energies and essence of just one word, K-A-L-I, and A-L-K-L-I. I should not spell while I'm thinking because I'm more of like a right brain person if I had to choose. I don't think anyone's like, you better choose which brain you are, but I just said I better not spell while I'm thinking, which sounds kind of funny, but once I start thinking, I start picturing stuff. But that's just me, and that's another thing I'm going to talk about throughout this journey. So the geometry and architecture of the Virgo glyph itself represents the embodiment of the Virgin and the Child, Jesus and fish. And so we are going to be working with some notes from that book I had mentioned last time, The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. The Virgo glyph clearly looks like the letter M, and M represents water. M is mem in Hebrew, from the Jewish creation myth, meaning mother. Mother is female, material, substance, magnetic, negative, etc. Here you see three glyphs that resonate with this letter M in the visuals of the glyph. The three M's is what we're calling them, and this theme of the three M's will come up a couple other times. Virgo, the pure water, on the left here, M. Aquarius, the water bearer, M. M. Scorpio, the water generator, M. M. Mother letters. The glyph is the embodiment of human form microcosm, being the head, the belly, and the chest. And actually, let me grab this glyph and put it up here so we have some reference. Okay. M is considered one of the most sacred letters, termed the mothers. These letters are Shin, Aleph, and Mem. And so we're looking at, you could say, Hebrew, but considerably similar to, why can't I remember the word right now? I'll get to it. Okay, so Shin, head, summer, heat, fire. Aleph, chest, spring, temperate air. Mem, belly, winter, cold, water. 3 in the universe, 3 in a year, 3 in the body of a male and female. Product of fire is heaven. Product of air is air. Product of water is earth. This is just playing around with this. So these are the letters there. The mother letters, Aleph meaning ox. Also, Mem meaning water, and Shin meaning tooth. These will also be themes, some of them. Side notes. One, I don't know how I wrote this. I did not know these meanings of Aleph and Shin, and now that I know, I find it very curious. Two, before when I was typing up topics that we would cover in the Grain of Salt journey, I accidentally typed Wizard of Ox instead of Wizard of Oz. And three, Shin means tooth, and we will come up on more tooth energies up ahead. The Virgo glyph depicts a little fish, and this shape is actually also similar to the Phoenician. I knew I would get to it. Phoenician. I couldn't remember the Phoenician character N or nun and the Hebrew letter nun. So Hebrew and Phoenician being very, very similar. I might even refer to Phoenician more than Hebrew. This character means fish and also Jesus. Visually, it is similar to a fish standing erect on its tail with its mouth open. Here, we have a nod to the royal arch of Solomon, Solomon being the soul of man. I am in the bowels of the earth where the light of the sun is not needed. Solar plexus, sun center, Virgo, and earth sign correlated with the bowels and the solar plexus. Out of darkness cometh light. Solar plexus theme, self-image. Also, a note down here at the bottom is a ruin called Ingwaz, which bears some similarity to the nun and even the mem letters here. Virgo, sensation wastes energy, Aries, and actually consumes material, Taurus. The fruit of the perfect solar plexus or womb of creation, Mary, becomes one with the spiritual consciousness, Aries the father, by working in harmony with it. Old Semitic names of Virgo are the shepherd, spirit of heaven, proclaimer of rain, great storm bird, bird of the great seed, crow, raven. Hindus knew Spica as Citra, figured as a lamp or a pearl, like this optic thalamus energy and solar plexus energy. Virgo, hub of the physical wheel, the branching nerves of the solar plexus forming its spokes. Virgin, the symbol of the purified emotion or purified lower nature, no longer fructified by the desire mind, the cerebellum, or the subconscious in Taurus. So the first earth sign shifted to Virgo, the second earth sign. This is where we are able to birth ourselves, our truer selves. Are we barren, or is this a play on what can come from nearly seemingly nothing? I have heard people describe zodiac signs like Taurus and Virgo, mostly the earth signs, as boring. But maybe it is actually a veiled compliment, as these earth signs have the ability and capacity to bore into a project, an endeavor to bore into someone's mind. Virgo and marrow. Virgo is the womb and the belly of the Maya, the mind, the belly of the mind, a symbol of primordial matter, astral and physical, in which the world soul is conceived in the period of involution, and from which it is brought forth into the manifest existence of the involutionary cycle. So that involutionary cycle being we have, let's say, an evolutionary cycle from Aries to Leo. Once you get to Virgo, you begin the involutionary process, the shift from the outer to the inner, and you birth a different layer of energy and a self. Virgo related to oil, fat, Christ, Mary. The Middle English word for Mary is marrow. Marrow is a highly vascular soft tissue or fat that fills the cavities of most bones. With the mention of marrow, let's dip into some traditional Chinese medicine exploration of our inner waterways, the triple burner, or triple warmer, or triple heater, or triple energizer, aka our meta fascia network, aka our connective tissue matrix and meta system. There is anatomy connected to the solar plexus and Virgo that I would like to introduce to you here near the abdomen, Latin for the belly. It is called the omentum. Omen as a verb to give indication of the future. Latin verb omenare meant to know or tell from omens, to predict. Omen as a noun is a casual event or occurrence supposed to portend good or evil. From Latin omen, foreboding, augury. Omentum is a fatty tissue that secures and protects the abdominal organs and intestines. Omentum is Latin for apron. A nod back to this. Whole, if you remember from the first recording. Whole, hal, entire, whole, unhurt, uninjured, safe, healthy, sound, genuine, straightforward, undamaged, Kylo, whole, uninjured, of good omen. This also made me think of the omen in phenomena, phi, and Fee, none, and Omen. Aleph. No. But yeah, there is, did I put it on the next page? Let me see. No, just here. So we have the liver, the gallbladder, we have the lesser omentum and the greater omentum. So that, it's apron though. So you can imagine it's like this sheath over the belly, and this is most likely a part of what is cut into when someone gets a C-section. And so it's a very tender, sensitive area, but as is most of what we call fascia in the body. But fascia has many forms in the body. So we're in this kind of paradigm shifting space. The lesser omentum is extremely thin tissue, only attached between the stomach and the liver. The greater omentum is highly vascularized fatty tissue called epiloon, related to epiploic, ploic, meaning to float or sail on. The greater omentum appears to float on the surface of the intestines and lower abdominal region. The greater omentum connects to both the stomach and the liver as well, but also to the small intestine, the colon, spleen, respiratory diaphragm, portal vein, bile duct, and hepatic artery. Note that loon and epiloon is a term for money and a way to call someone crazy. More on both of these energies another time. In traditional East Asian medicine, the abdominal organs are considered to be extremely important regarding physical and mental health. Some suggest traditional Chinese medicine practitioners are actually in an energetic interchange with the omentum every time that they touch, needle, perform cupping on an abdomen, etc. Western physiological identification of this anatomy can help deepen the understanding. Morphology and biochemical dynamics of the omentum is important. So the idea here is that we're not just talking about the separation between Eastern and Western worlds and medicines. We are merging, seeing how they can assist each other rather than continue this repetitive, perpetuated divide. The omentum assumes the form of a thin, membranous bag that is quilted into individual pockets, which acts as a storage reservoir for fatty materials and nutritional elements that are extraneous for the metabolic needs at the time. As nutritional requirements change, these stored nutrients can be released back into the bloodstream for immediate use throughout the body. I think our bodies are so fascinating. I feel it's so overwhelming. Like when we look at, let me see, this, like we did all this. You don't have, take it with a grain of salt. Did all this, and we're responsible for all this. My goodness, it's a lot, but it's also so cool. The omentum distills an oily vapor that lubricates the surfaces of the abdominal viscera and facilitates the perpetual motion of these organs over each other, like waves, like an ocean, whole and connected. The white marrow and bones is 98% fat. Fats are a major substrate for the formation of hormones. Harmony. Omentum, a dynamic shock absorber, another area one might call the brain of the gut. It is an energetic information relay station. Omental regions are called milky spots, and they can generate macrophages, which are specialized immune cells that bolster healing. Even stem cells are present in the omental tissues. So let's play a little with time. Virgo, momentum, omentum. The moment you realize you have forgotten something is actually the same moment that you have started to remember that something. Next comes recollection, if you dare. There is a pace, a place, a momentum, Between busyness and being frozen, it's a harmony, it's a slowing down. Eternal nature carry on the essence of archetypal roles as we live these truths that are evident within the fabric of all that is. Echoes of each other, sounds pour in. Wow, how absolutely stunning it is to be in this body while existing as an omnipresent force, a multidimensional recurrence as joy is contemplated and felt. Currency, precious present moment, spending time, paying attention. No, tropical astrology is not all there is. But look at this wheel here. Oh, I thought it was my cat meowing, but I think my mom is laughing very loudly. That's great. Look at this wheel here up in the corner. Let me make myself small. You see Aries and Taurus paired with C and C sharp. Is that what that is? Um, the pound sign slash hashtag? Based on, okay, let me zoom in for a second though, so you could take a look at it. So what I just pointed out was Aries and Taurus. Do, re, re. Okay, so based on what we've gone over so far, you could say that if your foundation of the two of Aries and Taurus, C and C sharp, are off, even a little, so is everything else. But ultimately, this little poem was inspired by the C and peripheral C. Getting lost in the sea or sea, addition becomes addiction. Lost or frozen in time, the essence of the feminine iced out. The periphery holds the key, nod to musical notes, while the center shines as balance. Memory eternal, always remains. Recognize sensation and hold your horses. Horses, again, being hippocampus. Another note here is that let's say with tea as gossip, or what one might drink in Wonderland, too much tea can leave one putrefied instead of purified. And so with momentum, that brings me to Virgo's essence of time, momentum. This, the period of involution, is actually where a lot of momentum is gained. With the M, as we have discussed, this potent key of manifestation and materialization, Virgo, a mutable sign, you could say she is neither masculine or feminine, but neuter in some senses. Barren earth, who holds the capacity and ability as virgin to birth worlds. We add to it, we add it to omentum to get momentum. Moment tummy. Momentum, 1690s in the scientific use in mechanics, product of the mass and velocity of a body, quantity of motion of a moving body. From Latin momentum, movement, moving power, figurative use, force gained by movement, and impulse, impelling force. Moment, very brief portion of time, instant. In moment of time. Moment, minute, importance, weight, value, movement, motion, moving power, alteration, change. Also from Proto-Indo-European root, mew, meow, to push away. Some explain the sense of evolution of the Latin word by notion of a particle so small it would just move the pointer of a scale, which led to the transferred sense of minute time division. In careful use, a moment has duration, an instant does not. The sense of notable importance, weight, value, consequence is attested in English from the 1520s. Meaning opportunity, as in seize the moment, is from 1781. Remember, we talked a little bit about paralyzing the solar plexus. Sounds like seizing the moment a little bit. Mew. I just want to go meow again, but mew, mew. I don't know. It's a root meaning to push away. Makes me think of moo or even Mewtwo. More on moo though another time. At the bottom here, I did put this division sign, and then I put it with this the eyes crossing, or not crossing, but facing towards like the nose. And then here I put the division symbol sideways, and that would create, you could say, a line between our eyes. More on that another time too. And actually, while we have this momentum, let us chat a bit about Mercury. When it comes to planetary rulership of Virgo, given that we have focused on speech, communication, stories, sharing, travel, etc., Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, but some say Virgo is actually ruled by Chiron or Ceres. Specifically, in a nod to Gemini anatomy, hands and fingers, we recall the dactyl. Roman god Mercury, Greek god Hermes, conductor of the souls of the dead to the lower world, the god of oratory. The lower world, that solar plexus passageway. Themes of Mercury, the planet, Mercury, Hermes, Gemini, Virgo. Commerce, markets, roads, tradesmen, thieves, merchandise, messages, information, conveying information, the mind, mental consciousness, awareness, connection, curiosity, innocence, technology that's a little different from Aquarius, Uranus technology. Side note, Gemini's astral colors from the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation book are red, white, and blue, which is very fitting for Gemini sidereal season, actually, which relays from June 20th to July 16th-ish. Mercury and Hermes, the inventor of the lyra. Lyre? The lyra? A musical instrument, but also a nod to a mysterious organ in the brain with the same name. This is the source of the singing voice, making the lyre in the brain a positive pole in the body. There are many poles in the body. The vocal cords in the throat where the sound is emitted is the negatively paired pole with this brain lyre. This reminds me of the polyvagal theory and the mention of a sing-songy voice being calming in certain situations. More on that when we go over Pisces. This was making me think about Mercury and Venus both governing two zodiac signs. Venus, or Taurus, Venus, Earth, preceded by Gemini, Mercury, Air. Virgo, Mercury, Earth, preceded by Libra, Venus, Air. It's like a little sandwich loop. A dance of word and flesh, a representation of Hermes, Mercury, and Aphrodite, Venus. Hermaphrodite. All right, the lyra. The lyre. A coronal anatomic specimen with a schematic reference image. That's what we have as A here in the upper left corner. The white matter fibers of the crus of the fornix can be seen forming the inferior medial margin of the posterior aspect of the body of the lateral ventricles at the level of the splenium of the corpus callosum. Okay. And B, we have the coronal T2 weighted image showing the dark signal of the crura of the fornices, where these yellow arrows are, at the level of the posterior aspect of the body of the corpus callosum. The crura are joined across the midline by the saltarium. The saltarium. Okay, I didn't even really make this connection until right here, so I have to make a note to myself because we gonna be at some point getting into all the talk about salt, which begins, of course, with Virgo, as Virgo is another representation of the salty sea. But I think it's funny. So the saltarium, how did I not notice that before? I mean, maybe I did point it out when I was doing these. But that's why life is fun and cool because you forget and remember things, seemingly so continuously at times. So the saltarium, let me just now you see it if you didn't see it. The saltarium. The lyre or harp of David, also called the hippocampal commissure or commissure of the fornix. Um, the body of the fornix is situated at the dome of the fornical arch-like configuration is connected to the inner surface of the corpus callosum and the septum pellucidum. I don't know how you pronounce all these. I'm doing my best here, but um, I'm reading all of this not to just confuse you or overwhelm you, but if you remember from the first recording, I said that the Salts of Salvation book, a lot of that is about how our anatomy is what a lot of the spiritual texts like the Bible are about, and it's not actually about certain stories. So just describing, one aspect of our anatomy can show a lot of these geometrics and angles that carry, they're all a part of us. We're all alive here. Even things that are seemingly dead are alive. Um, Okay, let me drink some of my coffee. Okay. Mercs, Latin meaning goods or merchandise. Mercury utilizes the electrical energy of thought and subtle nerve fluids positively and beneficially or negatively and destructively. Merchandise, wares or goods utilized in commerce or exchanged by the mind and the body. As god of oratory, he refers to the mental power necessary to become a good speaker, one who voices truth. Living out of alignment with oneself and one's path is robbing the body by wasting precious substance. We perfect these fluids from head, Aries, to toe, Pisces, so that once it reaches Pisces, ferrum phosphate, the fluid is able to attract the highest form of ether or akasha into the body. And we become thieves when we make no effort to do this, stealing not only from ourselves, but from others as well. Mercury rules nerve fluid, cerebrospinal fluid. All living things express the wonder of life with motion. There is movement with the rotation of the planets, the photosynthesis of plants, to the physiology of our own human cells. Life moves. All healthy living tissues gently breathe with the motion of life at the deepest of level of cellular function. It has been theorized that the central nervous system, CNS related to Virgo, PNS, peripheral, so central nervous system related to Virgo, peripheral nervous system related to Pisces, is in a constant rhythmic motion that is considered essential to human health. The body is viewed as a living structure. The cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, is the fluid of the brain, cerebro, and the spinal cord, spinal. CSF acts as a cushion or buffer for the brain, providing basic mechanical and immunological protection to the brain inside the skull. The constant rhythmic motion of the human body, the potency of healing, and the living anatomy are all synergy of motion of 5 basic components. I gathered this from a couple sources, so sorry for not mentioning where. I am not claiming I made this up. Again, and apologies to whoever I didn't cite this source from. The inherent fluid wave within the CSF that bathes the brain and spinal cord, it could be Wikipedia. CSF, like the sap of a tree, of initial recipient of the potency of life. 2, the inherent expansion and contraction of the brain and the spinal cord. 3, the motion of the meninges, the membranes that cover the brain and spinal cord. 4, the movement of the cranial bones. And 5, the involuntary motion of the sacrum within the pelvis. CSF, or cerebral spinal fluid, is a clear, colorless, plasma-like body fluid of the nervous system that is produced by a plexus of cells in the ventricles of the brain. CSF circulates throughout and around the central nervous system, and it stores light and energy current from our soul and spirit. The CSF bathes, nourishes, and protects the brain and spinal cord, as well as contains the breath of light that is given from the inner spirit. The CSF mediates all critical function of the nervous system and communicates with the brain and instructs it what to do. The continuous production and reabsorption flushes the CSF through and around the central nervous system and is reabsorbed back into the bloodstream through venous sinuses in the brain called arachnoid villi or villi, related to the arachnoid membrane. Some of this is a combination of information from Ascension Glossary, the Salts of Salvation, and another source that I used. I went to a crazy college preparatory school, and I just feel like a lot of things here. I just want to relay information. And I get like, we were really hounded to cite our sources. So when I don't, I'll be like, bad, you are bad, Teresa. And then I'm like, so I'm not trying to claim it's mine, but let's just continue. The cerebrospinal fluid produced in the ventricular system of the brain has four significant purposes. Chemical stability. It maintains a consistent chemical balance with mediating critical neurotransmitter function. 25% of it is absorbed oxygen, and 25% of nutrition from diet are in the cerebrospinal fluid. It influences cerebral blood flow and respiration due to its alkaline pH. The rhythmic motion of the CSF may serve to milk the pituitary gland with hormonal transport to the neuroendocrine system. 2. Protection. CSF acts as a water bag to adapt the brain and spinal cord to gravitational weight-bearing body movement and to absorb and dissipate impacts and traumas of life. A simple sneeze would be traumatic to the brain without this buffer. And we have buoyancy. CSF is the same density as the brain, allowing it to float in neutral buoyancy, maintaining its weight and shape. The 3-pound human brain has the buoyancy of approximately 3 to 4 ounces. The 35-gram or 1.25-ounce spinal cord has almost no gravitational weight bearing. Virgo, Mercury, Quicksilver. Metaphysically, Mercury is the mind, and physically, the central nervous system, the nerves. Chemically, it is quicksilver, an oily or fatty substance. The argentum vivum, or living philosophical silver quick. Hold on. The argentum vivum, or living philosophical silver, quick, meaning living. Quick means living, alive, animate, characterized by the present of life. And figuratively, it is about mental qualities, rapid, ready. That's more new. The older definition you could say would be from living, alive, lively, bright, sprightly. Whereas more recently, it's about being swift, speedy, hasty. Circa the 1300 year, it says on notion of full of life. Quick also means living persons. The alchemical metals of both Gemini and Virgo are quicksilver. Although Virgo also connects with tin, but we will talk about that later. Mercury is an amalgam. It can separate gold and silver from other ores, releasing them from their bondage with impurities. Vaccines nod. Hehe. None are healed until whole or holy. Virgo, the free woman. Heal to be made whole. Proserpina, the daughter of Virgo, Ceres, queen of the underworld, bowels of the earth, the symbol of the negative interpretation of Virgo and of corn, corn being the archaic term for seed. Seed corn cast into the ground, lies concealed, carried off by the god of the underworld. When seed sprouts and shoots upward, its appearance symbolizes the return of Proserpina to Ceres, the virgin. Ceres is also ser or cree, which means to make, and Ceres is actually Latin for corn, corn being a continuous theme with Virgo. Shifting gears a bit, we look at Mars and Aries as energy, and Venus and Taurus and Libra as material. The balanced binary lying between the two in a tropical model at the equinoxes. Flooding Pisces, the markets, Virgo, has some varying depth. Flooding the markets, money, product, material. There is a divine order. Allow it, own it, be your own boss, respect your spirit. With the many-colored spectrum of thought, we crystallize as we become crystal clear. This is real treasure and true abundance, not denying our emotions and thoughts, but truly being here. But blood carries nutriments and air, Mercury, to every cell. Every corpuscule is a water-air creature, truly a salt-water habitant, a human fish in the cosmic sea. It's a little bit more of the salts of salvation stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about Aquarius energy at some point with this stuff too. as Aquarius is every human, you could say. We are all water bearers. Okay, so with Mercury, we have a major emphasis on thought. You could say on the brain. So again, in traditional Chinese medicine, the brain, actually, I'm going to pause this real quick. I have to take something out of the fridge real quick. Okay, so again, in traditional Chinese medicine, the brain is considered to be a sea of marrow. And the omentum is the sea of marrow, you could say, in the gut. All blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Marrow is the soft, flexible connective tissue with bone cavities. So different ways to look at it, highly viscous fat or soft, flexible connective tissue. Let's also take a nod at lymphoid tissue. This is white blood cells, bone marrow, thymus, spleen, and lymph nodes. Thymus and lymph nodes are the most highly organized lymphoid tissues. You could say our blood cells comes from our thymus. It's not the only place, it's all these places. Bone marrow, lymphoid tissues are mixed with blood-forming cells and no apparent organization. Kidney Jing produces marrow, a nod back to nephrology when I first mentioned some Pisces or some Poseidon and Neptune energies. Kidneys are often correlated with Libra, which comes after Virgo, in a nod to Venus, as mentioned, and Libra as air energy. Kidneys are water element, along with the bladder in TCM. Fearing the waters below is related to the bladder and the kidneys carrying energy like fear and terror. Touching on the lymph system and on water element, that brings us back to the Virgo-Pisces axis. And now this is another segue. So thank you for being here in this timing, this space, and this place. A little note about this Virgo-Pisces axis and the journey that I hosted in September and October last year. I don't know why I feel the need to, but I am doing it. I'm sure there's other things that are off here. We collectively experienced a unique eclipse season. There are typically 2 eclipse seasons in each year, with 1 solar and 1 lunar eclipse in varying order, and some rare times there are 3 eclipses. There's actually even more some years. We'll see some in the next 10 years that have like 5. And these seasons are about 6 months apart. What was unique about the last season was an added almost eclipse, is what it was called. So eclipses are related to the nodes of the moon, and a lunar node is either of the 2 orbital nodes of the moon, that is, the 2 points at which the orbit of the moon intersects the ecliptic. The ascending or north node is where the moon moves into the northern ecliptic hemisphere, while the descending or south node is where the moon enters the southern ecliptic hemisphere. So we'll go over a lot of that Earth and ecliptic and elliptic stuff at some point too. In some Hindu lenses, the north node or solar eclipses are Rahu, and the south node or lunar eclipses are Ketu. They are considered to be 2 halves of the immortal asura or demon Svarbhanu, who was beheaded by the god Vishnu. So you have Rahu and Ketu as the north node and south nodes, and we're currently coming up on a year after this point, and we are now venturing further into tropical Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node, and closing up the chapter on the sidereal Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node. What else did I want to say? There was something I wanted to say there. And I don't remember. Oh, I guess just that this part was from Wikipedia. See, I'm like, I have to say it. For the special cases of solar and lunar eclipses, these only happen during an eclipse season, the 2 times of the year when times of each year when the plane of the Earth's orbit around the sun crosses with the plane of the moon's orbit around the Earth, and the line defined by intersecting plane points near the sun. It's a lot of words, whatever. I like to say, just let it wash over you. The type of solar eclipse that happens during each season, whether total, annular, hybrid, or partial, depends on the apparent sizes of the sun and moon. Apparent. If the orbit of the Earth around the sun and the moon's orbit around the Earth were both in the same place with each other, then eclipses would happen every month. There would be a lunar eclipse at every full moon and a solar eclipse at every new moon. It is because of the non-planar differences that eclipses are not a common event. If both orbits were perfectly circular, then each eclipse would be the same type every month. Lunar eclipses can be viewed from the entire night side half of the Earth, but solar eclipses, particularly total eclipses occurring at any one particular point on the Earth's surface, are very rare events that can be many decades apart. We recently experienced, the one of the great eclipses. We will discuss eclipses in astronomy more later on, so thanks for bearing with me for all that. I don't know why I'm saying that now. Ever since I hit my head, I say a couple years ago, I've hit my head quite a few times. I say astronomy or astrology. Thanks for listening to all that astronomy lingo. There will be more, and it's not to be boring, but I'm a Taurus. It might happen. But really, there's a reason I share things, and it's sort of to, what's the word? Um, Prime you for things that I will share later at some point. Like I said, if you watch the first video, I don't really share like 1, 2, 3. I'm like 1, 27 million, 3, 18. I'm going all over the place, but there's a centralized theme of sorts here. So, okay, we have this imagery here, all these things. Moon's orbital plane, Earth's orbital plane, no eclipses. Lunar eclipse, solar eclipse. I don't need to go over all of this with you. Like I said, we'll talk about some more of this later. Oh, see, I didn't edit it. So let me pause it. Edit? I decided not to edit it. So note the word apparent from what I just read. And like I mentioned before, people will stay arguing about this pole versus that pole. But to me, it's more fun to dance beyond and between them. Flat Earth versus globe Earth. Like I said, we will chat more about this, but note that there couldn't be some universally supreme truth, but I guess I just see things a little differently. The term eclipse is derived from the ancient Greek noun eklepsis, meaning the abandonment, the downfall, or the darkening of a heavenly body, derived from eklepo, which means to abandon, to darken, to cease to exist, and ek, out of, to be absent. Lepo. Without going deeper, so last September and October eclipse season, the tropical north node had been in Aries and the south node in Libra, and the 13 sign true sidereal north node in Pisces and the south node in Virgo. So this already happened, but in January, the tropical north node shifted to Pisces for about 18 months and the south node to Virgo. So in sidereal, we play with the constellations, especially in 13 sign true sidereal. Virgo and Pisces are both pretty large constellations comparatively, but there is some overlap with surrounding signs. So we are in the summer in the northern hemisphere, and the sidereal nodes are shifting from Pisces, Virgo to Aquarius, Leo. September 2025 eclipse season ushering in and out this phasing. In July 2025, the 13 sign true sidereal south node will shift to Leo before the north node shifts to Aquarius. So this is what we're in. And there's many approaches. So that's why I say that because 12 sign sidereal, I think in May, that's when they would have switched. But again, I just don't feel the need to choose one. And if you hate that, that's just okay. That's all right. That's just not for you. I'm just not for you. In July 2025, the 13 sign true sidereal, I already said that. So it shifts, the south node shifts to Leo before the north node shifts to Aquarius. So for some time, we will have a Pisces north node and a Leo south node. This is my midpoint natal north node south node. So there is a website that I mentioned in the first one called masteringthezodiac.com, and he specializes with the midpoint method. When I look my chart up on there, well, let me reel it in 12 sign, I think I might have mentioned this already in the other video. I don't remember. 12 sign tropical, I have Pisces North Node, Aquarius, I mean, Leo, Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node. 12 sign sidereal, Aquarius North Node, Leo South Node. 13 sign true sidereal, IAU or NASA boundaries method, I have a Pisces North Node, a Virgo South Node. You don't need to remember any of this. But then in this midpoint method, 13 sign true sidereal, I have a Pisces North Node and a Leo South Node. And this doesn't need to mean anything in one way, but it does give me a little bit more perspective on my own uniqueness, if you will. And the fact that I'm experiencing my second North Node return. Later in July, the North Node, South Node, and sidereal shifted to the Aquarius Leo axis. But before then, or before that happened, we had the March 2025 eclipses. So I'm not going to go over this. You can take a look at this if you want, but we're in August now, so we're just past this energy, but it's just me showing the emphasis of why I chose to focus on the Pisces Virgo axis, because we're experiencing it for quite some time with overlap and without overlap between the tropical and sidereal methodologies. So let me see how much further I want to go here. I feel like I have quite a bit more. We'll see. Water, kidneys, fascia, diaphragms. Okay, so we turned back to the Virgo-Pisces axis and we'll continue to touch on Virgo, but before moving to Pisces, we'll talk about Neptune, aka Poseidon, and his trident, amongst other things. Something I was thinking about while falling asleep the other night was plantar fascia. Plantar fascia. Plants often attributed to Virgo, feet with Pisces, plantar fascia being at the bottom of the foot. This is also where kidney 1 meridian point is. And if you were not paying attention or whatever, when I mentioned the idea of fearing the waters below, being related not just to physical water, but the idea being that if you are afraid of water, it could be related to the lower water elements in the body, the lower organs in the 12 meridian organ system in TCM, the bladder and the kidneys. They hold energies like fear and terror and are connected directly to your autonomic nervous system. And so if you have a lot of, let's say, unacknowledged trauma in those meridians and organs, you may actually fear both physical water and the depth of your own inner waters. I've been there. I still don't love physical water. I'm a little scared because I have fought a giant squid in another life. But let's take a little segue in this arena before diving deeper into the Neptunian waters. Side note is water element, bladder, and kidneys are all connected to winter in traditional Chinese medicine. So winter and the cold, etc., is another theme. Along with frozen, you'll see it throughout here where I capitalize the O and the Z, the Ahs in frozen. The plantar fascia is probably often heard of because of the inflammation form called plantar fasciitis, but this fascia is a diaphragm of the body. Actually, all thick bands of fascia in the body are located in areas also labeled as diaphragms, but so far in modern science, only so many have been more widely recognized as such. I will explore these more later, but did want to introduce the concept here so that we can physically and metaphysically acknowledge their physiology and presence and be open to a sort of reclamation of our own remembrance of this connection with our own inner waterways. I had mentioned on on another video, I know it was this one, the triple burner energizer also being related to the fascia or to the metafascia network, aka our connective tissue matrix, metasystem. So a quick overview of a diaphragm is on the next slide. I relate the diaphragms to fire and air, the tetrahedron and octahedron coming together, a different way of seeing divine fire water. Many, if not all, of the diaphragms have some sort of triangular anatomy. So, some of the thickest bands of fascia in the body constitute the locations of the diaphragms of the body. The purpose of any diaphragm is to augment the flow of interstitial fluids throughout the body. Some some diaphragms of the body, 12 total. I say they are also sort of energetic reservoirs. I worded that kind of funny, but whatever. So the number one here that I've listed is the diaphragm celli. There's one of them. This is the dura mater that covers the sella turcica and forms the roof over the pituitary fossa. Funny enough, turcica is also the name of a genus of sea snails. Marine gastropod mollusks in the family Eucyclidae. Yeah. Words, like I said. Um, we'll talk about snails and other sea life at some point. Tentorium cerebelli. There's one of these. This is the dura mater that separates the cerebellum from the occipital lobes. Suboccipital triangle. There's one of these, and these are the muscles situated under the suboccipital bone. Tongue, throat, neck. There's one of these. So this is the laryngeal diaphragm. You know what those are. I don't have to explain that. Thoracic outlet. We have two. These are anterior cervical fascia, subclavius muscles, costocoracoid ligaments, and clavicular ligaments. So around your shoulders. You might have seen this as thoracic outlet syndrome and didn't even know what your own thoracic outlet was. Respiratory diaphragm. I like to say it like that. Respiratory? Respiratory? I don't know why I like it. Diaphragm. We have one of these. This is also called the thoracic diaphragm, different from the thoracic outlet or inlet. Okay? It's different because the thoracic outlet is the thoracic outlet. The thoracic diaphragm. It sounds a little confusing, but it's the way that science dubs it. Okay, so the pelvic diaphragm, we have one of those. This is the pelvic floor. The knee diaphragm, we have two if you have two legs and two knees. This is the popliteal fascia, cruciate ligaments, and transverse ligament of the knee. Plantar fascia, again, if you have 2 feet, you have two of these, thick band of fascia at the bottom of each foot. So if we count those up, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 total. And just playing around here, let me move this around, and I might need to pause this or actually wrap it up because I have to go cook some food for me and my parents. But this is everything I just read over, but showing you like these different locations. Um, a note here, because I'm just playing around. Tetrahedron, the shape here. Fire energy, Aries, Leo, Sag, Jupiter and Mars. Solar plexus energies, masculine. Plasma energies. This is a nod to Mars retrograde that we just had earlier this year. Octahedron. We have air, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, Mars and Earth, feminine, and gas. So it's funny because it's connected to the air, but it's also connected to Mars still. So I put gas, question mark, and then at the bottom I put plasma, fire, is one of the four fundamental states of matter. The others being solid, earth, liquid, water, and gas, air. That's semi my take. My take, kind of. And then again, the same list as the page we had it before. So we have the diaphragm celli at the top, and then the tentorium cerebelli underneath that, creating an octahedron. So this is just me playing around, okay? And then we have the suboccipital triangle, which would be, let me turn my camera back on. It would be like back here. So it's like back of the neck. It's a triangle. And so together with the tongue, neck, and throat, there's another octahedron. And then each shoulder gets a tetrahedron at the thoracic outlet energies. And then we have the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm creating another octahedron. 2 tetrahedrons, one on each knee, and two more, one on each foot. Should I just end this here? Let me see how far I want to go. Yeah, you know what? Because I'm getting into Poseidon stuff here, I'll stop it here. Okay. So I'll read these 3 more slides. Virgo, Pisces axis, the sea, and money systems. I mentioned the story of Mr. Poisson in the first 88 series recording, focus on money, on how we can be nearly consumed by their own grief. Um, Projecting bravado as they never truly leaned into and accepted their own self-worth and value. So let's play with how people relate the money system to water and to the sea, currency, liquidity, cash flow, frozen account, et cetera, et cetera. Let's also take a look at net worth being the value of all the non-financial and financial assets owned by an individual or an institution, minus the value of all its outstanding liabilities. Liabilities being a quantity of value that a financial entity owes, the value that an entity is expected to deliver in the future to satisfy a present obligation arising from past events. You could say that many see one's net worth as a representation of where one stands financially. Finance, an end, settlement, retribution, ending, pardon, remission, payment, expense. Telos, meaning end. Tele, meaning services. Due, dues, dues extracted by the state. Ransom, taxation, as a verb, to ransom, to furnish with money. When I say telos, it makes me think Talos, and that reminds me, well, I say it Talos, so that reminds me of a Marvel comic character, Talos, the Unnamed, a Skrull general in the Kree-Skrull War. He was born with the ability to shapeshift. More on that later. Finance. Phi, the golden ratio. Fibonacci, the fib of no chi, LOL. It eventually loses its connection back to 0 point and no center connection to return to. So it attaches to another living thing or consumes what is in its path to grow, to expand. Nance. This is Nancy. It can mean an effeminate gay man. It could mean a favor, grace, chaste. Is that how you say that? Chaste? Chastity. Nancy is derived from anus, pure, virginal, Agnes, and Hagna, pure or holy. Hagnos, holy, sacred, of places. Chaste, pure, guiltless, morally upright. Saint Agnes, saint of young girls and females. Agnes meaning lamb. Agnes Dei, Lamb of God. Many interesting layers of business, money, busyness, and time, etc., etc. Fin ants, fine lance, fin lance, lance being a spear. Throwback to Neptune etymology. And oh, I like this one here. Fin ancestors. Who are our ancestors with fins? So there's a lot going on with the shifts through time and space and differing perceptions, temperatures and homeostasis. And when I think of the sea and a certain masculine presence, I do think of Poseidon, aka Neptune. I've not been alone on my recent year's journey exploring the trident in the depths of the letter psi. These are the tridents, and this in the middle at the bottom is the letter psi, capital and lowercase. So let's end there. Let me just put it on this last page. Thank you for this time together, and if you choose to come and check out the next video, until next time.